Today, the altcoins are going up, but one altcoin is doing better than the rest, and that is Hex. Now, is this just a pump and dump short-term manipulation by a few whales, or is there something fundamental going on? Let's have a look at the on-chain data most people are not considering. Now, I've been covering Hex for a long time on this channel. And while this week is pretty positive, a price appreciation of 28%, the very long term doesn't look that pretty. At one point, Hex was worth 40 cents. Now it's 0.2 cents. Now, this massive run-up with the subsequent decline is no coincidence. Because have a look at the interest in Hex over time. This is the number of search queries for Hex crypto, and that peaked in September of 2021. The exact same time when the price peaked as well. And this is a pattern within all of crypto. Attention and prices are highly correlated with one another. If a lot of people look at a certain cryptocurrency, the price tends to go up. When the interest goes down, the price tends to go down as well. So if we do a price prediction, we are basically doing an attention prediction. How much will people be interested in an asset in the future? Now, Hex had a lot of technical developments over the years, the main one being the Pulse chain launch. Unfortunately, the website doesn't get that much love. Here the headline still reads, Hex went up 10,000x in price in 2 years. But we've already looked at this chart here, right? It also went down to the same degree. And it is kind of telling when we look at the website that there's a dedicated page just on whether or not Hex is a scam. That's a problem, right? Where there is smoke, there might potentially be fire. And it seems to have been the case here with Hex. A lot of rumors that came out true, Hex did go down over time. Attention died down, with it the price. But again, we are not interested in the past. We are interested in what's going to happen in the future. Will Hex see another revival? Will we see a lot of adoption going forward, a lot of excitement around Richard Hart, the founder of Hex, and the Hex project? The answer to this question is probably no. And here is why. Richard Hart, also known as Richard Schueler, is searched by the international police, by Interpol. He is charged with tax fraud and potential assault as well. Europol, so the European police, is searching for him as well. And the issue is that Richard Hart, or Richard Schueler, did not clarify his tax situation for the Finnish government. At the time, he lived in Finland. And so when you're potentially a criminal that gets searched internationally with high priority for tax evasion and potentially assault, that's a problem to bring a project forward, right? You always have to be in the hideout. And in fact, we do see less and less news of Richard Hart. He used to live stream every single day. Now he doesn't do that anymore, of course. It went so far that Uniswap, the leading decentralized exchange across all blockchains, delisted Hex. And that was because of an SEC lawsuit. Now the SEC dropped that lawsuit, but the search by Europol or Interpol has not been dropped. But let's have a look at the price development in a bit more detail, right? You had this massive pump and dump, but we want to know what's going to happen in the future. Now this is Hex relative to Bitcoin on a linear scale. But here we see the same thing on a logarithmic scale. And so now we can see how percentage changes develop over time. In the last 1.5 years, we did not see Hex underperform Bitcoin anymore. It just went in tandem. The volatility recently has slowed down quite a bit. That's probably also because the centralized exchanges do not touch the token. Hex is pretty much only traded on chain. There are no perpetual futures. Now, centralized exchanges allow for trading for all kinds of random coins. Meme coins, coins that clearly have zero value, are getting traded even with perpetual futures on various exchanges. Why do people stay away from Hex? This was already the situation before we had the search warrant for Richard Hart. There's something going on with the token itself. I want you to have a look at the liquidity of Hex on the chain. So we've got 1 million worth of liquidity over here, another one over here. That's both on Pulse chain. On Ethereum, we've only got 500,000 worth of liquidity here. Another 400k over here and another million over here. So maybe in total it all adds up to 4 or 5 million, something around that ballpark. Now 4 to 5 million is a very different number when we compare this to the official market cap of Hex, which is $4 billion. Actually, it's not just 4 billion, it's 4 billion plus 1 billion. 4 billion is just what we've got on Pulse chain. 1 billion is what we've got on Ethereum. Let's continue focusing on Ethereum. We've got more than 300,000 holders over here. And in the last month, we didn't see a lot of new wallets trade the token. Every day, it's only around 10 to 20 wallets that start trading HEX again. And the vast majority of wallets that interact with the token are returning users, mainly probably arbitrage bots. The number of buyers and sellers over time tends to decline. And the charts over here show the story why the centralized exchanges stay away. We've got massive manipulation in the token. This is now the number of holders on the left side that have at least 500,000 HEX tokens on Ethereum. At the current price, that's roughly $1,000 worth of the token. In the middle, it's a 10x from that, so that's 5 million tokens or $10,000 worth of the token. On the right, it's another 10x, so that's now $100,000 worth of the token. Now let's forget about the erratic movements in those charts. That's a first sign that there's manipulation. Let's just look at the raw numbers. So apparently there are more than 2,000 wallets that hold more than $100,000 worth of HEX. That's 200 million worth of HEX. But we've already talked about how the liquidity on chain is only 5 million. So a single whale can drop the price massively. And what I believe is going on here is that Richard Hart and team owns pretty much all of those wallets. The insiders of HEX own pretty much all of the project. The only reason why the price can go up is because the liquidity is low, and then sometimes, at least in the early days, retail investors pushed up the price. But then the insiders could simply cash out, right? They simply sold some of the holdings they had, the holdings that were left in all of those wallets. So in this holders chart, it looks like the ownership is somewhat well distributed. But it really isn't, because this is all manipulation. This is all insider wallets. And then when this is dropping in those step functions, it's just the insiders that are consolidating their ownership into single wallets. There's no reason to assume that this is natural, that from one day to the next, 2,000 wallets that own $100,000 worth of the token suddenly disappear and the price barely moves around that time. Now, it's quite common that altcoins tend to underperform versus the major benchmarks, versus Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana. For example, have a look at this. This is Optimism. It's within the top 100 largest cryptocurrencies, and it's just doing worse than Ethereum constantly. But we can also flip that chart around, right? This is now Ethereum relative to Optimism. So we can make money when most people are losing. Or have a look at this. This is Balancer relative to Ethereum. Again, when we flip this around, we've got a very nice performance chart. And the story is always the same. This is the token inflation of Balancer. This is the token inflation of Optimism. It's all going up over time. The early investors, the team, the insiders, the KOLs, they are all offloading over time. They get allocations, they get vestings, they might unlock their tokens a few months or years after launching of the project. And that creates constant sell pressure. And that's why we see so many altcoins doing so poorly long term. The demand for altcoins in aggregate doesn't grow as quickly as the supply does. Whenever I show those token supply charts on this channel, it's all from Tokenomics AI. So feel free to just go through that website, check out how much additional demand there has to be for a single altcoin just for the price to stay flat. Usually the altcoin demand isn't as high as the additional supply that hits the market. And so that's why the majority of altcoins is red over longer periods of time. That's why Bitcoin outperforms most other assets, because Bitcoin can't inflate like all of those altcoin projects. The Bitcoin inflation is only 0.8% per annum. Ethereum has currently an inflation of 0.7%. And most of those altcoins have much higher token inflation. That's why they are down. And so that's how I personally navigate this market. I'm simply betting on falling relative valuations. I'm of course not sharing the individual positions over here. This is part of Premium. It's down below, thebitcoinstrader.com. But in general, it's about having the odds in our favor. We don't want to try to pick the needle in the haystack, the 1 or 2 or 3 altcoins that go up. We just bet on the majority of bad tokens continue to stay bad, right? Why would they suddenly turn around when there's so much new supply hitting the market regularly, at least in aggregate? On average. Here's my performance in the last 2 months. So this is now via perpetual futures. I'm going long the asset that I'm long-term bullish on, and I'm going short the asset that inflates crazy like this and that just continues to go down long-term versus the benchmark. And so our community, of course, does very similar trades as well. This is the Share Your Wins channel where people show what kind of altcoins had been shorted and what kind of returns are possible. And it's all about risk management, right? Let's have a look at this. Stop loss moved to 1.1, let the rest run. Because while it's nice to have the odds in our favor, it's still important to have proper risk management in place. If you get completely wrecked just because of a single short squeeze, just because there's short-term manipulation in a single asset in a short period of time, you don't want to lose everything. You want to have proper risk management. I'm of course sharing my personal trades in Premium as well. So this is a screenshot. This is the kind of opportunities we are looking at, right? We want to be in a long-term downtrend and ideally at the top end of that long-term downtrend. And then we open a short over here and wait for a quick dump to then take profit to then go on to the next poorly performing altcoin. Have a look at this example here. This is where I shorted WorldCoin. We got some nice individual gains here as well. And of course, the community copy traded that as well. So of course, I don't encourage just to blindly copy every single trade that I do, but it can be a first start to make initial gains. Again, before starting any of these kind of approaches, make sure that you learn about how to properly do bet sizing, how to do proper stop loss setting, how to also trail those stop losses over time. So there's this video here, risk management with relative valuation bets. You can also check out this video using perpetual futures on Hyperliquid to bet on relative valuations. Both videos are roughly half an hour in length. So feel free to join us. It's currently $125 per month. There's also a 1-week money back guarantee. So in theory, you can just sign up, you can watch all the tutorials, and then after 6 days, you decide it's not for me. You can ask for a refund. I'll refund everybody, no questions asked. But of course, I hope that you will make money simply just by getting inspired by the community and by potentially copy trading me, and then stay subscribed. So feel free to check it out. The link to Premium is directly over here. Just click on that. It will lead you to the sign up page. If it's your first time here, feel free to subscribe. I publish this regularly. A like would be very much appreciated as well. It helps the channel grow. See you next time on YouTube or see you in Premium. Cheers.